Welcome, ladies and gents, my name is Curci, and today we're going to be talking about Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. Now, here's the thing with Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. First off, I really like this game. From a gameplay standpoint, it is really good. This game is a great game, and if you want to play a good game, here's a game that is really good with its open world, with awesome different elements in it. When it gets to the story, that's where it kind of stumbles. Now, this is the first ever Metal Gear Solid game that I've ever played. I have played Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, although I'm not really going to count that, because these are two extremely different games. Even though they could arguably happen in the same universe, in the same reality, none of them feeds into the other. They have completely different gameplay. They are just totally different games that exist in the same universe. So what is Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain? Well, it is a game where you play as Snake. You play as Big Boss. You start the game by waking up in a hospital. Apparently you've been in a coma for about 9 years. And these are the events that follow the events that happened in the pre-game. They're the sort of demo. Not really sure what this game is, even though it is kind of technically, to me it kind of feels like they took Ground Zeroes. They originally had it as part of the Phantom Pain, and then they broke it off and tried to sell it so that they could make more money. However, I was on to them, and then when it was free for gold, I played it, and bada bing, bada boom. But basically, the events in Ground Zeroes lead directly into the events that happen in the Phantom Pain. Because what happens in Ground Zeroes is that there is this original mother base, basically the events that happen in Peace Walker. The mother base that you create in that game gets attacked, it gets destroyed. So you wake up in this hospital, you're not really sure what's going on, you have this guy that's kind of guiding you, you're crawling on the floor a lot, there are soldiers, there's this guy that's on fire. Like, there's a lot of mystery at the start of the game, and then when the game really starts kicking in, when it starts to introduce, like, yes, you are Big Boss, you are the leader of the Diamond Dogs, we have to find our old friends, assemble this private army, this private military force. So you're rebuilding this new mother base, you are rebuilding this new military force, and you're taking it out to attack and defeat this enemy force. And this enemy force is led by Skullface. He is essentially the villain in this game. Now, as a character, he seems pretty interesting. He seems to have like a lot of charisma. They don't really give him a whole lot of background until maybe a little bit later. As a villain, however, not really all that great. But that's the story, and even though the story has its stumbles where things in the beginning are kept very vague and then things start to heat up a little bit later before things go way off the rails, the gameplay is where the Phantom Pain truly shines. This is one of the greatest gameplay experiences ever, because it balances stealth gameplay and combat so well. So as in certain missions, you're going to be doing a lot of reconnaissance. You're going to be on a high place, so basically a vantage point, and you're going to be using your binoculars to kind of tag guys, and eventually you'll be able to scan them, and when you scan them, you'll see where their skills rank out, and sometimes you can even extract those soldiers if their rankings are to your liking. Because that's a whole other aspect to this game as well, is in addition to doing recon and finding different guys and extracting them so that you can recruit them to the Diamond Dogs themselves, you have to also manage these different departments, these different branches in the Diamond Dogs. You have an R&D department, you have a medical department, you have intel, you have combat, you have support. Because a lot of times you'll be looking at your staff and you'll say, this guy has an A in intel, but he also has a B in R&D. And if I move him to R&D, R&D will level up. I will be able to develop that weapon that I've been eyeing up, and then I will be able to use it in combat. This game is so much more than stealth and combat and story. No, it has almost like an RPG kind of element where you're taking the staff members and kind of managing them. It's really just more than it had to be, but it does it well. Now, going back to the stealth is really good. Like, you'll go around, a lot of times you'll be using different outfits, and those outfits will help you blend in a lot better with your surroundings. Like, if you're in Afghanistan, you're probably going to want to use a much more tan outfit, but if you're in Africa, you're probably going to want to use more a little bit wooded, maybe being able to blend in a little bit more with the red soil. But playing this game fully stealth without being noticed, grabbing guys, being quiet, either taking them out silently or just interrogating them to find out where your objective is or where some of the other enemy units are. Playing this game with stealth is one of the more fun things I have ever done. It's so well done and well executed, and it just makes me feel like I am this covert operative that is moving about unseen. A lot of missions, there's this base, there's an objective, I go into the base, nobody sees me. I complete the objective and I leave, and it's almost like I was never there. As far as they know, they showed up and this thing is now no longer there and they have no idea what happened. But then there are some times where things just kind of go awry. Sometimes you will be spotted and you're going to have to take a more aggressive approach where you're going to have to pull out your assault rifle and start gunning dudes down, or you're going to have to pull out a rocket launcher and start firing at helicopters. But in a lot of games that put a lot of emphasis on stealth, one of the things that they tend to do is that when a firefight breaks out, that usually prompts a reloading of a checkpoint where you're like, oh man, I was spotted, I'm not going to be able to do well here, I'm just going to reboot and I'll start again. But in this game, it feels like another option. You don't feel like you've lost control of the situation. There are times where you feel like you've lost control, but when combat is initiated, that doesn't happen all the time because you feel capable. You can just take up a position inside of a building and just start gunning dudes down. Maybe you could just gun down the guys that are in your immediate area, which allows you to pull and escape. Or you can call in a helicopter and a support and they will start firing on the guys that are there and giving you extra cover. Like, there are so many options that you can do in this game that go beyond just either sneaking and completing the objective. If you don't want to sneak, you want to go in guns blazing, you can do that. And you'll be able to do it. It's not like that the enemies are so drastically overpowered that they just gun you down. Like, I feel like a lot of the earlier Splinter Cell games, I feel like those games, when combat is initiated, you kind of lose it. So you really, in my opinion, you have to go through that game with stealth. Like, that is the one thing that you have to do. Now, later Splinter Cell games give you the option of being able to fight back a little bit more. You're able to hold your own in a combat situation. But Metal Gear Solid 5, I feel like, does a great job of balancing both stealth and gameplay so well. Now, there is also this buddy system that you can also use, and basically what this buddy system is that you have a other person that is with you out on missions. So there are a couple of different options here. You can use a walker, which I really never honestly use, but hey, it's there. And then there's D-Horse. D-Horse is with you from the start of the game, and essentially you use him the way you would use a horse. You go from point A to point B with your horse, unless you order him to poop, which is definitely a thing in this game, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. Then there's the assassin Quiet. Quiet, you know what? I understand the way Hideo Kojima is. Why do we have to have this character in there? I mean, if this character had a jacket or a shirt, I would have liked the character more, because I just feel like she's unnecessarily clothed the way that she is, or lack of clothes, basically. To me, it makes me feel like the game is being made by a bunch of immature people that know that if they have a half-naked person in this game, that it's going to sell more. In my opinion, I'm like, why? Like, she is an interesting character. Later on, when they start getting into her character a little bit more, she is interesting. But why does she have to dress this way? There is a reason, by the way. There is a reason as to why she's dressed the way that she is, but I feel like that reason that they gave is just giving them an excuse to keep her very unclothed. We could have taken out that explanation, have her just be a normal person, but there's also a reason behind some of her other character traits as to maybe why she doesn't talk. Like, she can still be an interesting character if you just put a jacket on her, and then I'm not so annoyed by her. Now, she herself is a very interesting buddy. She's very, very useful. So you can use her to kind of recon out different outposts. So if you say are on one side of the map and you have to drive to the other side of the map, which you can actually airdrop in cars if you extract cars, but you're trying to get to this other outpost and you basically just want to get an idea of what you're walking into. So you'll send Quiet to kind of do some recon. She'll tag some people, and when she's done, she'll take up a sniping position and she'll wait your order. Basically, when combat is initiated, she will start firing. She is really useful for getting out of sticky situations. There's a lot of times where I'm pinned down inside of a building. I have to extract this prisoner. If I run out with him on my back, there's a good likelihood of him getting shot in the head. And I don't want that to happen. So I have Quiet come in. She starts popping out some dudes, basically create an opening for me to jump out. You load them up in a vehicle and you get out of there, but you use the opening that Quiet has created because she's been sniping out these dudes constantly. But I think the one greatest buddy is DDog. DDog is the best. DDog has the ability of tagging anything and everything from plants to wildlife to vehicles to storage containers to enemies. And he'll tag them through walls. You will be able to see people through walls. You won't be able to see their stats. You still have to scan them if you want to see their stats. You still have DDog giving you complete situational awareness. You know that these guys are going to be around these corners, so you're not surprised when you turn around and there's a guy right in your face. But then there's also a point in time where you can upgrade certain things for him. Like, you can upgrade things for your buddies where you can get like different skins to make them look different. When you build up a bond, basically if you are on a lot of missions with these characters, they will be able to customize them. Like, if you want to change their color scheme, you can do that. But the ability that DDog can have is that in addition to giving him extra armor, he gets a knife. He can use a knife and jump on enemies and slit their throats. Your dog can do that. DDog is so infinitely better than Riley from Call of Duty Ghosts. I understand that Riley took out a helicopter, but he has a knife and he cuts people with it. I imagine that sounds a little psychotic, but yeah, DDog better than Riley. Also, better game, Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain over Call of Duty Ghosts. Although many games are better than Call of Duty Ghosts. I feel like I'm getting distracted here. But my point being is that the gameplay value of Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain is what makes this game so good. Because why do we play video games? We play it for the interactivity. The most important thing about a video game is its gameplay. If the gameplay isn't good, the game is not good. It is not fun. Now, I do hold narrative to a high regard, but it isn't the most important thing in games. Now, when games do deliver a good story, like say if you're a Mass Effect or you're a Walking Dead, then that's great. If those stories aren't good, we have to look at those games just from a gameplay standpoint. And let's be honest, The Walking Dead, not a very good game from a gameplay standpoint, because it is really all about the story there. But Metal Gear Solid 5 doesn't have to have a good story. It has this great gameplay that it can fall back on, and it does fall back on, because let's face it, the story, while good in some areas, while brilliant in some areas, kind of falls off the face of the earth for a little bit. Now, the Metal Gear Solid series is really well known for its narrative. There are a lot of Metal Gear Solid games that are notorious for having extremely long cutscenes. Metal Gear Solid 5 does have a few lengthy cutscenes, but it has taken a real step back. In fact, a lot of the story and a lot of information is told through cassette tapes, and it's an optional thing. If you don't want to listen to them, you don't have to. But if you do, they're there. And it does have a lot of insight and information that helps shape the story that's happening around you. But the problem with the story is that you can definitely tell where the problems between Hideo Kojima and Konami began, because at a certain point, a lot of cutscenes seem to be coming out of nowhere. There are a lot, like I said, a lot of brilliant moments in this story, but it really just falls off the face where they just feel really jagged in the second half. They just kind of show up, and then the ending just kind of happens. There's no events leading up to it. It's just like, yeah, you've completed enough of the game. Here's the final cutscene. All right, you're done. And I'm like, what? And there's also a lot of story arcs that just kind of go unfinished. Like, yes, there is a YouTube video that kind of shows and completes those story arcs, but a lot of them are really incomplete kind of character models where a lot of them are just basically talking with their mouths closed. But then when the action kicks off, where the gameplay is supposed to kick in, it's just a whole bunch of concept art. And the concept art that I see looks incredible. Like, if this was in the game, that would be fantastic, but it's not. And you want to know why? Because Hideo Kojima decided to leave, or that he was fired. I don't know the story, but the fact that he left, this game feels unfinished. And you can totally tell in the mission list of the game, because basically a lot of the story is told through the mission list, where you have these missions. A lot of them are kept very vague, but they sort of feed into the story a little bit, or they sort of feed into this kind of narrative. In the first half of the game, they're really thought out. They're really good, where you're doing different things, but not really doing different things. Like, yeah, you're going in and you're extracting this guy, but then there's also a reason as to why you're extracting that guy, where that guy is a scientist that we need later. Oh, by the way, he told us some more information about Skullface. But then in the second half, it starts reusing some of the missions that you've completed before, where there's a mission where you're riding around and you basically have to blow up a whole bunch of armored vehicles before time runs out. You do it in the first half of the game, but then when it pops back up in the second half of the game, it's now on extreme mode, where basically it takes out reflex mode, which basically what reflex mode is that when an enemy sees you, you have a certain amount of time to basically aim at their head and shoot them, to either put them out with a tranquilizer or kill them. But on extreme mode, it takes out reflex mode. It makes things more difficult. But you're still playing the same mission. It's rehashing those same missions over again. And a lot of these extra challenges are actually pretty cool. Like I said before, I really love the stealth in this game. When I use stealth, I have a lot of fun. So there are certain missions where it gives you the total stealth challenge, where again, you're playing a mission that you've played before, but this time you have to do it without being spotted once. Otherwise, you have to start over from a checkpoint. But it makes me think to myself, like, why wasn't this throughout the entire game? For every mission in the first half, why couldn't I just hit a button and say, I'm going to do the total stealth challenge, or I'm going to do the extreme challenge, or I'm going to jump into this mission without any weapons? Like, why isn't that stuff in the game? It just makes me feel like at a certain point when the issues between Hideo Kojima and Konami started happening, why did this game go off the rails? Why did this happen? The game just kind of feels unfinished. Even though what's there is great, the story kind of goes off the rails a little bit. A lot of the characters get really great character moments, but that never really does get fulfilled in a lot of them. I just feel like the game disappointed me at the end. And when I play games, you have to have a strong ending, because if you don't, I'm going to remember that really kind of lackluster ending. And that's what happens with Metal Gear Solid 5. Even though there were great moments, those moments led up to nothing. And that's one of the big negatives for this game. And it keeps me from saying that this is a fantastic game, one of the best games ever made. It holds it back. And it actually kind of baffles me that people are playing this game, giving it 10 out of 10s. And I'm like, From a gameplay standpoint, I could totally understand it getting a 10 out of 10, but if you're saying to yourself, like, the story was great, it was awesome, no, it was unfinished. What are you talking about? Listen, guys, in the end, Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, while not perfect, is still a really great game. It's still one of the better games to play this year, and if you want to play a great game that has great gameplay elements, this is the game for you. But if you're looking for a good story, you might find yourself disappointed. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.